You want to know what scares me more than a Siberian winter? A woman who cannot feed herself when the store is closed. I have seen temperatures that freeze the words in your throat before they reach the air. I have buried potatoes in October, knowing that if I measured wrong, my children would go hungry by March. I have pulled a calf from its mother at 2 in the morning, with nothing but a lantern and my own 2 hands. And I survived all of it, not because I was brave, not because I was special, because I had no other choice. That was what it meant to be a woman where I come from. You did not wait for someone to save you. You did not ask permission to be strong. You simply did what had to be done, and then you did it again the next day. But now I look at the world and I see something that worries me more than any blizzard. I see women who have forgotten what their hands are for, and I do not say this to be cruel. I say it because I love them, because somewhere between my generation and theirs, something important was lost. Not comfort. Comfort is good. I am not one of those old women who think suffering is a virtue. I wanted better for my daughters. I wanted warm water and full shelves, and medicine that did not come 3 days too late. But I did not want them to lose the thing that kept me alive all those years. I did not want them to trade knowledge for convenience and call it progress. My name is Valentina. I was born in 1943 in a village so small it barely had a name. The nearest town with a proper road was almost 40 kilometers away, and in winter that distance might as well have been 1,000. My mother gave birth to me during a storm that knocked out every light in the village. My father was not there. He was somewhere on the front, and we did not know yet whether he was alive or dead. It was my grandmother who delivered me. She cut the cord with a knife she had sterilized over the stove, wrapped me in a wool blanket that smelled like sheep, and told my mother to sleep. That was the kind of woman my grandmother was. There was no panic. There was no crying. There was only the next thing that needed to be done. I grew up watching women like her. Women who could look at a forest and see food, medicine, shelter and fuel. Women who knew which mushrooms would feed you and which ones would kill you, and who taught you the difference before you were old enough to read. My grandmother could tan a hide, set a bone, deliver a baby, preserve enough vegetables to last 7 months, and build a fire in wind that would knock a grown man off his feet. She never went to school past the age of 11. She could barely write her own name. But she knew more about staying alive than any professor I have ever seen on a television screen. And she was not unusual. Every woman in our village was like that. My mother, my aunts, the old widow Martha who lived alone at the edge of the birch grove, and who could predict the weather 3 days out just by watching how the birds moved. These were not extraordinary women by the standards of their time. They were ordinary. That was the point. Survival was ordinary. It was not something you admired from a distance. It was something you practiced every single day. The way you practiced breathing. I learned to make bread when I was 6 years old. Not the kind of bread you buy in plastic bags at the store. Real bread. The kind that takes 2 days if you count the time to prepare the starter. My mother gave me a piece of dough and told me to knead it until my arms burned, and then to keep going. She did not explain why. She did not turn it into a lesson about patience or character. She simply said, "This is how you make bread, and if you stop before it is ready, it will not rise, and we will have nothing to eat with our soup." That was the end of the discussion. By the time I was 10, I could cook a full meal for 6 people, using nothing but what we had stored in the cellar and what I could find in the garden. I could milk a goat without getting kicked. I could mend a shirt so well you could not see where the tear had been. I could chop wood. Not well at first. I was small and the axe was heavy, and I hit my own shin once so badly I still have the scar. But I learned, because the alternative was to be cold. There was one winter when I was 12. The temperature dropped so low that the nails in the walls cracked. My mother was sick, a fever that kept her in bed for almost 2 weeks. My father was working at a logging camp 60 kilometers north. It was just me and my younger brother Sasha, who was 8. For those 2 weeks I did everything. I kept the fire going through the night, waking every 3 hours to add wood, because if the fire died, we would not survive until morning. I cooked, I fed the animals. I melted snow for water, because the well had frozen solid. I made broth for my mother and sat beside her and spooned it into her mouth, because she was too weak to hold the bowl. I was 12 years old. I did not feel brave. I felt terrified. But terror and action are not opposites. You can be afraid and still move. That is something my grandmother taught me. She said, fear is just your body telling you to pay attention. Listen to it, but do not obey it. Now I want you to understand something. I am not telling you this because I think every woman should live the way I lived. I am not saying you need to chop wood or milk goats to be a real woman. That would be foolish. The world has changed, and most of it has changed for the better. What I am saying is that the knowledge behind those things, the understanding that you are capable of keeping yourself alive, that has been lost. And it was not taken from women. They gave it away. They gave it away because someone told them they did not need it anymore. Think about what a woman in my village knew by the time she was 20 years old. She knew how to grow food. She knew how to preserve it. She knew how to cook it in 15 different ways, using almost nothing. She knew how to make soap. She knew how to sew, not just clothes, but blankets, curtains, bags for storing grain. She knew how to treat a fever, how to stop bleeding, how to ease the pain of a toothache when there was no dentist within 100 kilometers. She knew how to read the sky for weather. She knew how to insulate a house with moss and clay. She knew how to keep a fire burning through a night so cold that water froze inside the house. She knew how to birth an animal and how to butcher one. She knew how to make decisions under pressure, because pressure was not an occasional visitor. It lived with us. It sat at our table. It slept in our beds. And now I look at young women today, and I see something that breaks my heart. I see intelligence. I see ambition. I see courage in ways my generation never had the freedom to show. But I also see a kind of helplessness that would have been fatal in my world. I see women who cannot sew a button, who do not know how to cook a single meal without a recipe on a screen, who have never grown so much as a handful of herbs on a windowsill, who panic when the electricity goes out for 3 hours. And again, I do not say this to shame them. I say it because that helplessness is dangerous. Not today, not while everything is working, but the moment something breaks, and something always breaks, they will have nothing to fall back on. My daughter Anya, she's 53 now, she moved to the city when she was 19. I let her go because I wanted her to have choices I never had. And she did well. She studied, she got a good job, she married a decent man. But one winter the heating in her building stopped working for 4 days. 4 days. and she called me almost in tears, asking what to do. I told her to hang blankets over the windows, to boil water on the stove and fill bottles to keep in the bed, to wear layers and keep moving during the day. Simple things, things I thought everyone knew. But she did not know them, because I had not taught her, because I thought the city would always take care of her, and she would never need the things I knew. That was my mistake, and it is the mistake of my whole generation. We wanted to protect our daughters from hardship, so we protected them from knowledge. We thought that if they never had to struggle, they would never need to know how to survive. But struggle does not ask for an invitation. It comes whether you are ready or not. And when it comes, the woman who knows how to do things with her hands will stand, and the woman who knows only how to press buttons will fall. I remember when my granddaughter Lena visited me 2 summers ago. She is 26, a beautiful girl, smart. She works with computers, something I do not pretend to understand. She came to stay with me for a week in the village, and on the 2nd day she asked me where the nearest cafe was. I laughed, not to be mean, but the nearest anything was 20 kilometers away. I told her, there is no cafe, there is the garden, there is the cellar, and there is the stove. She looked at me like I had told her the earth was flat. That week I taught her a few things. How to pick cucumbers at the right time, how to tell when the dill has gone too long, how to make a simple soup from what you have, without measuring anything, without following instructions from anyone, just looking at what is there and knowing what to do with it. At first she was frustrated. She kept asking me how much salt, how many minutes, what temperature. I told her what my mother told me. Use your hands, taste it, watch it. The food will tell you when it is ready, if you pay attention. By the end of the week, something had changed in her. I could see it in the way she stood. She was not different. She was just a little more solid, a little more present in her own body, like she had remembered something she did not know she had forgotten. On her last day, she made soup entirely by herself, and when she tasted it, she cried. Not because it was bad. It was actually quite good. She cried because she realized she had never made anything real with her own hands before. 26 years old, and she had never once fed herself from scratch. That is what I mean when I say women have forgotten how to survive. I do not mean they are weak. Modern women are strong in ways I could never be. They speak up, they fight for things, they demand to be heard. My generation did not do that. We were silent, we endured. That is not better, I know that now. But there is a difference between being strong in your voice and being strong in your body and your hands and your knowledge of the physical world. And that second kind of strength has almost disappeared. The world has taught women that survival skills are for men. That knowing how to fix a pipe or start a fire or sharpen a knife is somehow beneath them. That these things are primitive, unnecessary, old-fashioned. But I will tell you something. There is nothing more modern than a woman who can take care of herself completely. Not because she has money, not because she has a phone full of delivery apps, but because she knows in her bones that if everything else fell away, she would still be standing. I think about the winters of my childhood sometimes, not with nostalgia. I do not miss the cold, I do not miss the fear. But I miss the competence. I miss the feeling of knowing that my hands could solve almost any problem the day threw at me. When the roof leaked, I knew how to patch it. When the food was running low, I knew how to stretch it. When someone was sick, I knew which herbs to boil and how long to let them steep. I was never helpless, not once in my entire life. And that is not a boast, it is a sadness, because I look at the women who came after me and I see how easily they could be helpless, how close they are to it at all times without even knowing. My mother used to say something that I did not understand until I was much older. She said, "A woman who cannot make fire is a woman who is waiting for permission to be warm." I thought she was talking about literal fire. She was, but she was also talking about something bigger, about the idea that if you depend on someone else for the basic things, for food, for warmth, for shelter, for safety, then you are not free. You are comfortable, but you are not free. Because freedom is not the absence of hardship. Freedom is knowing that you can survive it. I see these discussions now, these arguments about what women should be and what they should want. Everyone has an opinion, everyone is shouting, but nobody is teaching. Nobody is saying, "Here, let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to grow tomatoes. Let me show you how to can fruit so it lasts through January. Let me show you how to start a fire when the matches are wet. Let me show you how to read the wind." These are not romantic ideas, they are skills. They are the difference between a woman who survives and a woman who waits to be saved. And I want to be clear about something. I am not blaming modern women. I am blaming the world that told them these things did not matter. I am blaming a system that decided convenience was the highest goal, and that anything difficult or dirty or physical was something to be eliminated rather than learned. I am blaming the mothers and grandmothers, women like me, who are so desperate to give their daughters an easier life that they forgot to give them a capable one. When I was 35, my husband Kolya had an accident in the forest. He was cutting timber and the axe head came loose and buried itself in his leg. There was no ambulance, there was no phone, there was me. I tore my own apron into strips, made a tourniquet, loaded him onto the sledge, and drove him 14 kilometers through the snow to the nearest woman who had medical training. It took me 3 hours. His boot was full of blood by the time we arrived, but he lived. He lived because I did not freeze, because I knew what to do, because my mother and my grandmother had taught me that panic is a luxury and action is a necessity. Now tell me, if that happened to a young woman today, in the middle of nowhere, with no phone signal and no help coming, what would she do? I am not asking this to be harsh. I am asking because the answer terrifies me. Because most of them, through no fault of their own, would not know. They would not know how to stop the bleeding. They would not know how to move an injured person. They would not know how to navigate through snow without a road. And that ignorance is not their failure. It is ours. It is the failure of every generation that decided survival knowledge was outdated. There is something else I want to say, and I know it will not be popular. But I am 82 years old, and I have earned the right to say unpopular things. I think we have confused comfort with capability. I think we have confused having things with knowing things. A woman today can order food from her phone, and that is wonderful. But if the phone dies and the store is empty and the power is out, what does she know? What can she do? What is she without the systems that serve her? I am not saying go live in a forest. I am not saying reject technology. I love that my granddaughter can talk to me through a screen from 1,000 kilometers away. I love that women today can study whatever they want and work wherever they choose. I love that they do not have to marry at 16 and spend their lives bent over a washboard. That is real progress. That matters. But progress should add to what you know. It should not replace it. You should be able to use a computer and start a fire. You should be able to order food on a phone and also cook it from nothing. One does not cancel the other. They are layers. And right now, too many women have the top layer, but nothing underneath. I remember when I first saw a washing machine. I was 47 years old. A neighbor in the town had bought one, and she invited us to see it. I watched the clothes spinning in the water, and I thought, this is a miracle. I had spent decades washing clothes by hand, in water so cold my fingers turned white. I was happy for that machine, but I also knew that if it broke, I could still wash clothes. I had not lost anything by gaining something new. That is the difference. That is what I am trying to say. The machine is good, but the knowledge of how to live without it is also good, and you should have both. I noticed something in that town over the years. The women who got machines first were the ones who forgot fastest. Within one generation, their daughters did not know how to wash clothes by hand at all. They had never felt the weight of wet wool. They had never scrubbed a stain with ash and cold water until their knuckles were raw. And when the town had a water shortage one summer and the machines could not run, those women stood in their kitchens holding dirty clothes and looking lost. Meanwhile, the old women from the villages, the ones who still remembered, they just went to the river and did what they had always done. They did not complain, they did not panic, they just did it. Because the knowledge was still in their hands. My youngest granddaughter asked me once what I would teach women if I could teach them anything. I thought about it for a long time. I did not say cooking or sewing or farming, though those things matter. I said this. I would teach them to trust their own hands. I would teach them that their body is not just something to be looked at. It is a tool, the most important tool they will ever have. It can carry, lift, build, dig, mend, create. And the more you use it, the more you trust it. And the more you trust it, the less afraid you become. Fear is the real enemy, not discomfort, not inconvenience. Fear. Fear of being cold, fear of being hungry, fear of not knowing what to do. That fear lives in the gap between what you need and what you know. And the only way to close that gap is to learn. Not from a screen, from your hands, from doing it wrong and doing it again, from the sting of the nettle and the ache in your back, and the satisfaction of eating something you grew in dirt you turned yourself. I know I sound like an old woman shouting at clouds. Maybe I am, but I have watched the world long enough to see patterns, and the pattern I see now is a dangerous one. Every generation knows a little less about how to survive than the one before it. Every generation is a little more dependent on systems they do not control and do not understand. And when those systems fail, and they will fail, because nothing built by humans lasts forever, the people who will endure are the ones who remember, the ones who kept the old knowledge alive. The ones who can look at an empty field and see a garden. I will not be here much longer. I know that. The winters feel heavier now, and my hands are not as steady as they were. But before I go, I want to say this to every young woman who will listen. You are more capable than you know. Your body can do extraordinary things if you let it. Your hands can learn any skill if you have the patience to fail at it first. The world has given you comfort, and that is a gift. But do not let it make you forget that you come from women who survived things that would have broken the world you live in now. That strength is still inside you. It is sleeping, and all you have to do is wake it up. Go outside, put your hands in the dirt, learn to make one thing from scratch, just one. Bread, soup, a fire, a shelf, anything. And when you have made it, when you are standing there with your hands dirty and your back sore, and this thing in front of you that did not exist before you created it, you will feel something you have never felt before. You will feel like a woman who does not need to be saved. And that feeling, I promise you, is worth more than anything you can buy.